Alrighty, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, it's good to hear. I realize that standing between you and the bar is dangerous territory, so I shall make it quick. Let's see, we'll talk a little bit today what's happening at Webb, just on a high level view. I think also at the end we'll spend some time talking about where your money is going, because we talk a lot about fundraising, but it's good to know where the money actually goes, so we'll talk about that today. We have 105 students this year at Webb, 25% of them women, including one Southampton student, Lissandro, who you met earlier today from Brazil. He's studying in Southampton. We've accepted a full class of 28 for next year. We would have liked to have gotten at least 25% women. That would have been 7 students. We ended up with 5, so we're a little short on that side. We had admitted 9 women, but fell a little short of that goal. They chose to go elsewhere. But one thing that we did have a big increase this year is a number of applications. The last few years we had about 185 applications per year. This year was 250, so a big jump up. So our acceptance rate is going down, which is good actually. We're not at Ivy League levels of 3 to 5% yet, but we are improving. And so that is an improvement we'd like to see. And a little bit different, not all of you know this, but today the admissions process is quite different than many of us, when many of us went to school. The students that come, or prospective students come the night before, they have interviews, and they will spend the night with students. They're interviewed by students. There's even a test, a math test and an English test. They go to some classes along with interviews by faculty and myself, and we collect all of this information in a student-run process to see how the students fit into the organization and into Webb. And you know, if a student is really disinterested and on their phone the whole time and not paying attention, we figure they're not that interested in coming to Webb, so that we take that into account. And of course, we look into the broad spectrum of being a good student, not just about the marine interest, that's important of course, but also their motivation and activities they're involved in. And we do continue to meet demonstrated need, so around $300,000 for the last 2 years, just over that, has been demonstrated need met or given to about 25 students. So around a quarter of the students receive some form of aid, and that can come in the form of scholarships. Round about half of that amount is in scholarships, and the balance is either in terms of aid coming from grants, for example, the various grants from the government, Pell Grants and FESOG, or also from some loans. So that's how we finance the room and board and fees part of it. Of course, everyone does get a full tuition scholarship, but they have to pay for the rest. And we'll talk later what that equation looks like for students. So student life is in full swing. Ski trips, SNAME, OTC. SNAME is where all the seniors go to SNAME. OTC, all of the juniors go there. The Society of Women Engineers, we had a contingent that went this year as well. Webstock comes in a couple of weeks, as does Gatsby. The etiquette dinners, this year actually we had 2. One was we're changing the timing of the etiquette dinners. The seniors are in about next week, I think, or the week after. Sorry, we just had the senior one. We actually had an interesting thing for the seniors this year. I went through their admissions information. And you know, they had all of these tests with Dr. Golubeva, and I actually gave them their test results and what their interview results were. And there were some very interesting sort of observations from them as prospective students to them later on as prospective graduates. Some chuckling over there, I'm sure you would find interesting. Maybe I'll send you yours. The dinghy sailing team, as we mentioned, is doing very well. They've qualified for the 3rd year in a row, going to nationals in a couple of weeks' time. And I have to change out this picture because we have a new set of sails. This is the picture from last year. You will have seen on LinkedIn and various social media some great photos of the new sails on the new fleet. So take a look at those. Of course, we have the other sports, soccer, basketball, tennis, volleyball have all done well. Offshore sailing is just starting sailing. I think they had the Italy Trophy a week or two ago. We're starting a new thing. You know, we've always had on our web page something about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We'd like to change the emphasis, and we'd like to change the emphasis to talk about web values, because we think it's broader what we value here at Web. We talk about excellence, we talk about community, and we talk about opportunity. These are all things that are important and values that the students can relate to, and to be honest, all of us as alumni can relate to. So we're working together with the board and with the students as well to develop this concept, and you shall see that fairly soon when we get that rolled out. Alyssa Caligiuri is now promoted to be head of admissions and student affairs. She was already with the department as the associate director of student affairs. She moves up. She had been one of the two on-call people, and on-call people, so it's different than when some of us older alumni were at Webb. You know, basically if things were happening, we were a little bit on our own. Whereas today, we have people on call to assist and respond to emergencies. We think that mental health and mental support and emergency support is a very important function today on college campuses all around the country, and this is what we do here at Webb. So she will move up then from that role. We have a staff member who we are working with and developing to move onto campus and take on an on-call role in addition to her other duties. We will then fill in the vacated position with an admissions officer who we're going to task with, if you will, bringing up our admissions numbers and looking for those new great candidates of the future. So that's in progress, that whole transition, and when we have more of a plan and formalized, we will come out to you with an announcement on that. We are looking to add a faculty member for ship design and naval architecture and marine engineering. The board has approved that position. We're having a little trouble finding the right position, so I see a few of you out there who maybe have expertise in that area. So if you're interested in moving into the teaching, giving back position, please put your name up, or if you know of somebody who's reaching that point in their careers when they're willing or interested in taking that step, let them know, and please let Dean Werner know about that. In Southampton, of course, we have the exchange program running with them. This year we had 13 of the sophomores to be, freshmen this year, have applied for spots to go to Southampton. And they're going through a sifting process to find out how many will actually go. Freshman retention is up to 96%, so most of the freshmen are staying with us. The graduation rate is 77%. That's measured over an 8-year period, and that number has been moving up as well. And I know, looking at some of the older classes, we had much lower numbers in our day, so I would like to get that number to approaching 85%. Tough to get 100%, but certainly closer to 85% would be a great number to be at. The sophomores take the STCW course. That's Safety Training Certification in Watchkeeping. It's all about safety on ships. It's more or less a mandate today to be on board a ship for having shipping companies to accept people on board ships. So it's an important course. They take that in the middle of August before classes start. They have a great time. It includes the firefighting course and all the rest of it. And that's a very looked forward activity. And finally, we have some great grants that we got this year. The Bailey Foundation has funded, and Spencer Boyd in the back is very much involved with that project, the Marine Engineering Laboratory, or Marine Energy Laboratory? Laboratory. $150,000 grant over 2 years, and that's to develop a test bed for sustainability testing to be used for various projects. So they will be building this test bed and going to testing. We think that these kind of projects are important to become visible in doing research. So we'll be going forward with that. We still are running the Summer Engineering Academy. We have 2 sessions scheduled for this summer. I think so far it's something like 48 students that are, no, actually 42 students that are signed up, and that's for students between middle school and high school that will sign up for that. It's a way to get people to know about web. We normally have at least 1 or 2 students a year applying that have gone through that course, sometime even 3 or 4. And it's a way to get exposed to web, to get introduced to engineering, to be honest. It's been proven that to excite people and get them interested in STEM, which is science, technology, and math, you have to start early. So this is one way to start early. Engineering Day is what we've been doing for a number of years. This is all run by our students here, and we get in elementary school students to basically come in for the day. I think this year we had about 65 elementary school students, and they were engaged in various projects by the web students. And we have a foundation now from the Bailey, a foundation grant from the Bailey Foundation, C-STEP, which is Community STEM Education Program, $30,000 to make a program to go to high schools around the area or farther to excite and energize and introduce students to this area. So very exciting for us to get to some external funding for that. One of the things that's very important, and we talk about it all the time, is how do we make web known externally? We love hearing stories about how did you find out about web, but at the end of the day, we think that every great high school student, or at least great in STEM topics, should know about web. Shouldn't have to be, by happen chance they heard from somebody, at the yacht club or at the boatyard or from a guidance counselor. It should be something that they know about us and choose maybe not to apply, that's fine, but they should know about us. And so we're working to gain visibility. Kaylin, and I'm not sure, I think she stepped out for a moment, she was here, oh there you are, okay, has been doing a great job in getting the word out in social media so that we get to be known and everyone knows us more, increase the number of followers. So if you see things that are posted, please extend and broaden your network to spread the word about web as well. And finally, college rankings. I see Wambi is here. Well, I've had long discussions about how do we do better in college rankings. We are excluded from a number of them because we are small and specialized. So the big one, which is U.S. News and World Report, basically, they don't even deign to grade us or put us into their rankings because we're either small or specialized. But for example, we have here, and I think it's missing, unfortunately, from the top because it's covered, but it is the pay scale ranking, and where they look at the return on investment from an education, and they look at the difference between the median pay with a bachelor's and median pay with a high school. They look at all these colleges. Harvey Mudd, which is one of our competitors, a little bit bigger, they're up at the top there. MIT, you see Kings Point, Caltech, Military Academy. Web is number 6 on this ranking, ahead of Stanford and Harvard. So, this is the kind of thing that we like to get the word out about how great a deal web really is. Now, facilities changes. This is where you see that the money we're spending gets spent on good use. Now, we were having a discussion at the board meeting, and Tim Lazuski made the presentation, as he often does to the board. And one of the things that he mentioned was that this year is better in terms of the senior class satisfaction. A big negative had been the last 2 years was we had basically finished these new dorm rooms that had taken the place of the old classrooms, but we couldn't use them because we had a problem with getting certification. We didn't have enough water pressure on campus. The line coming into campus was too low or too small, and the water flow was too low. So if you'll go to the model tank on the end, you'll have to walk around the end to the back of the model tank. You'll see this expanded pump room there, a 100 horsepower pump that cost unfortunately 300,000 plus to put in. But now if we have a sprinkler event, we have power on our own to use the model tank as a water source to pressurize our pipes. So we've gotten around the problem. So we solved that problem. The students are in. They're a little bit happier now that they're in compared to not being in these new dorms. And they only got in last August, unfortunately. So that was a little bit late to get in. We have ongoing projects like we replaced the student dorms in Robinson with apartments, and I think there's a link on the website. You can take a look, about what it looks like inside. But we talk about facade restoration. We're doing a lot of that around campus, and I'll show you on the left here is the gym. You can go take a look outside, and you don't see it so well in the photo, but these windows are basically all just about falling off. They're 1947 vintage, they're rusted out, they don't open. And there you have on the right side the Robinson Basin after the restoration, after the new windows are put in. And you see, it's a world of difference. This is a 50-year investment that we're doing. And if you look around Stevenson Taylor Hall, you see the same thing. Now, those windows are original from 1912, and they're in great shape considering, but they're not going to last another 100 years for sure. And in many rooms you can't shut them, or in many rooms you can't open them. And it's a real challenge to make that happen. So we now have a 10-year plan, which we'll talk about later, a 10-year infrastructure plan about what's going on with the infrastructure on campus. A lot of things we're doing here. The library windows, if you see them, they were built in 1970. They're all rusting away. Next week, we're starting the project to replace them all. So we've ordered, it's a $300,000 project, new windows with high efficiency and so on. We'll remove all of the old ones and put new ones in. The fire escapes, the new ones that are, the old ones that are the closest to Long Island Sound from the two towers, which you have been up and down many times over the years. Those are being replaced. They were condemned by the fire marshal in Nassau County. Good enough to last until, anyway, we have an extension through the summer. This summer they will be installed. They're being prepped now and will be installed then. The students can't be here when the work is being done because then the safety factor is lost. There's lots of brick repointing and waterproofing going on. Naval architects are supposed to keep the water out, so we should get better at doing the same here on the campus. We're going to start on the Cuneo courtyard, especially the lower tier. When we have a northeaster with heavy rain, I have a waterfall in my office, for example. In the Rosenblatt Gallery, you'll see plaster that's coming off, and the same thing over in the new wing. It's not the finance wing over there. We have all kinds of leakages. So we have to do better at that. And that's all $400,000 for that various brick repointing and restoration. If you've taken a walk down by the Couch Academic Center on the outside, especially farther down, you will see some of the lower tiers fragmenting steps. We had failed material. And essentially we are in progress, we're in process of replacing those steps with new cast concrete steps. Security upgrades, we'd like to go to a card system, to better organize security around the campus. The laundry project was mentioned. Landscaping, as we start to do these projects, we need to landscape around the new renovated buildings. Maintenance garage, if you've been down there, you can see essentially the outer brick layer and the parapet is delaminating from the inside wall. The inside wall, the structural wall is quite good, but the outside wall is delaminating, and that's an expensive thing to deal with. We're working with Bentel and coming up with ideas. How can we manage this in a cost-effective way? I mean, it's only a garage at the end of the day. So can we get away with a reasonable restoration without spending a fortune? If you restore it to original, including all those brick pieces, it'll be millions, and we can't afford that, to be honest. And finally, the boat year project, you heard about that in the fundraising presentation earlier. And essentially, it's going to be done in the summer of 2025. Just as a sketch here of what it looks like. And essentially, the existing structure here, we would remove the existing porch because that's really in rough shape. We would extend the concrete patio. We would build a roof. This is an early sketch. There would no longer be columns here. We would have basically support trusses that would extend out to give an open view out to Long Island Sound. A bit of a cupola there to harmonize with the rest of the buildings on campus. Various brick refacings to get away from the concrete block look which we have now. And some drying racks on the outside so you can hang whatever you need to outside. And inside here, I didn't put the plan view, but inside this structure right here, there would be windows, and you can see here some windows and doors. So you could actually use it as a meeting room, a race committee room, something like this. And the idea of this is to be a good social spot as well as a facility for having races, and we had a great race. I guess it was last weekend, the Engineers Cup. So we had, I think it was 6 boats out there competing. So along with the racing, it's also fishing and the rest of those activities. And finally, John, the class of 1971, they contributed some money for doors, and we've been postponing this project because the original project was estimated at $20,000 to $25,000. They were for wood doors. It was actually going to cost $65,000. So there you get an idea where inflation's got to for doors. We've come up with a different idea, which is to use steel and iron doors, which has a great advantage that they don't need to be painted or varnished every year, because of course wood degrades. There's a long lead time, but we think it's worth it. And you can see here some views. Here we have the existing center door and the Cuneo courtyard door, and this would be the new iron door setup. So we're trying to keep the motifs that we had in the past. We have Bentel and Bentel, the architects, working with us to develop, a door that is consistent in theme with the existing building. And if you look, for example, the side courtyard doors, a bit simpler style, but still the same idea on the left here. On the right side, the rear patio doors, those are original, of course, from 1912. And as you can, if you've gone and tried to use them, I mean, they're sort of porous. They don't really keep out the wind. When you have a strong northwesterly, it's pretty breezy in there. And the idea would be to have something like this, a bit simpler style to come in. And then, you can't see it here, these doors would be the same central motif for the main pane, and that would be on the gym, on the Robinson, so they mirror each other, and on the Rosenblatt Gallery, which is off to the side there. So this is about, I think altogether this project is going to cost around $75,000, but certainly helped by the class of 71, so thank you for that. And the idea is to order it, and we hope to get them in before next winter. So we are underway with these kinds of improvement projects. We talk a little bit about money. So a few ballpark numbers. Operating expenses, $8.6 million per year this year. Capital expense, $1.5 million. All of these things that we're talking about, that we're investing in around the campus. Just over $10 million expected for total expense. 105 students, so that's just under $100,000 per year cost to run the programs and the facilities that we have here at Webb. We get from each student about $18,000 a year in room and board and fees for a student. So how do we make this equation work? Well, you see on the bottom left the revenue sources. Around 1/3 comes from fundraising, so that's the Webb Alumni Fund and other donations we receive, also from external corporations and so on, so all of those types of fundraising. Room and board and fees is just under 20%. The endowment, we tried to target 4.25%, as a sustainable draw. That's a fairly standard amount. Some institutions might even go a bit higher. That's the amount you can pull from your endowment without depleting it every year. And that takes about 1/3. But there's a deficit. It's around 15%. So 15% of 10 million, $1.5 million per year, we are drawing from the endowment beyond what we should be in order to fund everything that we're doing. Now, if you run math and divide $1.5 million by 4.25%, that's about $35 million. So that is the shortage of what we have in our endowment where we would like to be. And so when we talk about the capital campaign, that really is where the focus is going. Inflation has been all over the place. Of course, it's come down from the historical, well, not historical high, but quite high numbers we had a year or two ago. But we're still in, the 3.5% range, maybe a little bit higher. Certainly higher than it had been, 3 or 4 years ago. Pre-COVID was much lower. We've done, as I mentioned, a 10.5-year infrastructure plan, and a 10-year infrastructure plan that costs about $10.5 million. And 80% of that is really on maintaining the plant as we have it now. We have some things in there. We have $750,000 in there to install solar panels. We think that could be a great project, especially if we can get it done this year where we get some IRA, Inflation Reduction Act funding going. So we have a project with Spencer. He's doing the initial design. We're going to call in vendors now to work on that solar panel design. There was some money in there for trying to build a student rec center, potentially in Lookenback, but there are some other ideas we have about how do we utilize to best advantage all the facilities on the campus. Now, room and board and fees increased from last year to this year was 5%. For next year, so starting in August, that will go up 4%. And we have to cover the inflationary increases, and we also measure cost to deliver that service. So we take, a cost for all the food, for the housing cost, allocation of all that, and we cover about 83% of it. If we were to cover 100%, it would be up to $21,000 per year. So there is a fairly significant gap, and it's not something we can just say, well, let's raise it, because that becomes a problem then for the students to afford. So we're trying to balance student affordability. We also do benchmarking externally to see where we are in the market, compared to peer schools to make sure that we're in line. But it's something we do every year together with the Academic and Student Affairs Committee. We paid down some of our loan. It had been up to $6.5 million. It's now down to, we paid down $2 million. So it's down to $3.25 million, and another $250,000 will be paid down in May, so we'll be down to $3 million. With the interest rate up as high as it is, it doesn't make sense to keep as much of a balance as we had before. The endowment was $70 million as of the end of April. It's just a little bit above where it was last year at the same time. However, of course, we have been funding the operation from there. So about an 8.2% return on the endowment, which has been used to fund the operations of the school. And we'll maintain our financial commitments, and that's a commitment to our students and prospective students about a full tuition scholarship. And that's the commitment we'd like to keep going. Now, it was asked this morning in the class agent session, how do we compare? How do these numbers compare? Is this abnormally high or unusual for colleges? So this is a bit of numbers and maybe not so easy to see, but I'll just give you some highlights here. Put that up there. So Webb, Olin College, Cooper Union, and Stevens. So Webb is, as you see at the bottom, 102 students. Well, this was back in 22. So there's public information. You can go online to a thing called ProPublica. There's a thing called ProPublica Explorer, and any not-for-profit has their financials listed there, including Webb's. So we can do some benchmarking across colleges. And the latest year they have published is fiscal year 22, so that ends in June of 22. So what you look here, so the top line is grants and financial assistance. So Webb spends $55,789 per year, which is essentially the tuition cost that we have for all of our students. Olin and Cooper Union, it was mentioned earlier that they aren't able to keep a full tuition commitment. They have a half tuition commitment to their students. And when Cooper Union went from full tuition to half tuition, I think it was probably about 7 or 8 years ago, there was a huge pushback from the alumni community, specifically because there was a promise they believed had been made over the generations to that commitment, and they weren't able to keep it up. And we believe that's something that we really have to keep going here at Webb and don't want to be part of it, making that change. So that's why we're very focused on redressing the balance. And of course, Stevens on the right, you can see the next line, the cost of the compensation and benefits. So the cost of paying all the people for almost 38 people on campus that are employed between faculty and staff and maintaining the place. We're at about $45,000 per student for that. So that's $4.5 million if you do roughly times 100. And then you see the cost for the other colleges. So we're actually quite competitive, even considering that we are the smallest of those smaller schools. Olin is about 350 and Cooper is about 900. And you see some other costs here, But you look down there, so the cost to run the program and facilities, this was in 92, 2 years ago, was 92,560. And we were actually very favorably compared, we favorably compared to even somewhat bigger schools than ours, considering the cost structure that we have. And typically scale is a disadvantage. The smaller you are, the more your fixed cost has a hard time to get spread over the number of students. Of course, a bigger school like Stevens does have a lower cost base because they have many more students in their population, close to 4,000 students. And the endowments there, you see endowment per student. Webb has $650,000 per student endowment. Olin is about twice that, and Cooper also about twice that. If we get 35 million additional in endowment billed from our capital campaign, we would be up to, it's about 50% increase on that. We'd be cracking the $1 million per student endowment level. That's about where we need and feel we should be to support our own ongoing operation. So that's why you will hear more about this coming in the months to come. We'll have a fashioning of the vision of the campaign, communications externally, goals about where we want to get to, but it's going to have to be at least in the 30, 35. We'd love to get to 50 million as we got in the last campaign, but probably might be difficult to get to that same level. So we're trying to be realistic about what we can do. But certainly we need to get up to that kind of level, and we'll be talking more with the community when we go. So this gives you a picture, and I'm happy to share this information with anybody that wants to spend more time looking at that. Finally, giving back. You've heard it earlier from John, from Jake, about the giving back efforts that we have here at Webb. It's part of our DNA. We start early. If you were at the Heritage Society dinner last night, prepared by students, served by students. They lined up. It was a big crowd. I think we must have had about 30 or 35 students that were delivering that service last night. We gave them a great standing or a great ovation for all the work they've been doing. And that was the 11th one, or I thought it was the 11th Giving Day with the 10th Heritage Society dinner. Around $2.5 million per year, I think, is the number we've been giving through the Webb alumni program, and as I said, additional coming in from corporations and foundations. And this campaign is really to build a sustainable endowment. That's what the goal is here. So that, I think, is basically all we need to say. My view in the end is, when we go, especially to corporations and foundations, it's very difficult to go and say, just give me money to go into my endowment. They typically like to see giving linked to something that is measurably changing or moving the dial on something, whether it's sustainability, whether it's innovation. And that, I think, is something that we have to get better at, forming those campaigns, going out to get that kind of funding, staffing up internally to get the right people to go and ask for those funds, and really develop the network to get that in. I think it'll make us more visible, and I think it's also something that we see, can have a great dividend in when we run all of these campaigns and seek all this funding coming in from folks. So that is all I wanted to communicate to you. I wanted to ask, are there questions you have on any topic, or any topic not even mentioned here, about what may be going on, what you want to know, things I haven't covered?
Yeah, two questions.
There should have been a Q&A.
Q&A. Why do we advertise as having a $294,000 total four-year cost if the students really only pay a fraction of that? Yeah, this is interesting. So on all of the sites, including the Department of Education, the way they track, so the tuition scholarship that we give, which is this year I think $58,000 per year, must be classed as financial aid. So therefore, the actual education is the full cost of education, and then you have to pull out from that the tuition scholarship. So that's why it's that high. It's unfortunate in the way these databases are set up, but essentially we must register, and we do register, the full cost of providing the education, and then we can say that we give that as a tuition scholarship, the amount that is given out. But it does mean we have to register that. So it's not 20,000 times 4 or 18,000 times 4. The 72,000 is the actual cost you would pay, but we have to register it on these sites in that way. So that's a bit unfortunate from a marketing perspective. What we do provide, and this is something maybe, Kay, that we can focus on, is that translation in people's minds so they know that isn't what you pay, but that is the cost of the education provided. So that's the answer to that one. Second question. Let's see. If we're dedicated 100%, total for recap 75. Same question. It is true. That is what you spend. It's 18 times 4, 70, whatever, 72, 75. But that is not the way it's registered on all of the databases in the education business. So he says thank you. Thank you, Robert. Any other questions? Okay, let's see. We are just before 5. I think just in time for the bar to open. So thank you very much.